Alrighty, good morning everybody. Happy Friday. It's July 28th, 2023. Let's go ahead and jump into our review for yesterday so we can get into our pre-market for this morning. So I'm going to jump back, and actually what I'll do is I'll pull up the higher time frames and want to review here what we were talking about off the highs of the overnight session from yesterday. So remember, we said up on the daily we were starting to get another bearish argument from the overnight highs as we came into the open yesterday. We had continuing lower RVI levels, but we were pushing higher in price. And so that was kind of the first thing we saw when we jumped up to our higher time frames. We went to the 4-hour, and if we zoom back to that overnight high yesterday, we had the same argument. Again, I hate jumping through, a couple of days worth of price action for this, but the pattern was there. We had a push to a much lower low on this RVI, but we had pushed, about another 20 points higher, or maybe more than 20 points here on price. So we saw the beginnings of what could have been argued was a potential bearish signal up top. The only thing that was throwing me off yesterday was that our hourly up top, if we come back to the high of the overnight session, we weren't getting any type of really clean hourly bearish signal. So I kind of told you guys, that what I would expect to see up around the highs of the overnight session was for maybe the market to peak up to a slightly higher high, or maybe peak down to a slightly lower high, and then get some type of divergence signal up here on the hourly. So if we pushed a little higher in price, something where the RVI pushed slightly lower in price, and then we would have a nice divergence, and maybe that was when we were going to get the major pullback. I also said that doesn't necessarily have to happen in order for the pullback to occur, but that would make the most sense to me when we get that alignment. We never got the alignment, so I was wrong yesterday. I told you guys coming into the open, as we were pushing here, basically made the overnight high a couple minutes before the open. I told you it made sense for this to potentially continue to push if we could first of all get through the high of the overnight session. Well, the market opened and it was just a free fall all the way back down, right? So the hourly did not give us that signal I was waiting for, but the 4-hour and the daily were showing that potential, right? And now you can see we got this big major pullback. If we go to the 4-hour, a nice clean bearish signal from that high. The daily again as well is showing potential, but remember what we need to see when we start to get a signal from a candlestick. We need to see the low or the high, depending on which direction the market is going, break before we can call that an official signal. And so far, we haven't broken the low of this previous daily candle. So there's a potential signal for the bears up from the highs of yesterday, but we haven't officially broken through the low of this candle just yet. Maybe that's what will happen here this morning. I don't know. But that's what we were seeing. And so I was a little bit skeptical of the high of the overnight session being the high, right? I thought we would attempt to push or retest or push to a slightly higher high and get that signal. But let's take a look at what happened. We'll go down to the 512 here. Despite me telling you guys I really did expect it to try to attempt to continue to push, the market went ahead and let's get up to the open here. You could have actually gotten a really nice opportunity here right out of the open. And that was the pullback, being that we were expecting a push to at least come retest the high, and you could have got in there. I think that's the trade I took. I don't remember. But I think I also got long here. Unfortunately, didn't quite get to my 10-point target. Did get a nice 5-point out of it, or 4.5 points out of it, and then it started to turn. Now, if you were I love the fact that this week for our weekly webinar, so if you were in the weekly webinar this week, we talked about this pattern, and maybe what I should do is pull up and go over to maybe to my 3-minute. Give me a second here, just so you could kind of see it a little bit more zoomed out. We talked about these patterns in our weekly webinar where we get a push to some new high in the market, or at least for price action that day, and then the market attempts to come back up and then fails just in front of that previous high, and then that's when everything starts to drop out. And that was one of the price patterns we talked about in our weekly webinar. That's basically what happened here. So We attempted to hold and continue to push, and then again, just a couple ticks from the high of the overnight session, it failed, and then that was the beginning of the end for the bulls. So we had a great hold off the 200, and then once it started to fail and come back lower, we had a beautiful hold off the back end of the 200 for the push lower. And where did we bounce? We bounced right at our scaffolding level, interestingly enough, and held it nearly to the tick for 2 tests. Although the bears jumped in and held the back end of the VWAP, right? So again, this is like that bumper action, just bam, hold the back end of the 200, hold scaffolding, hold the back end of the VWAP, parry back and forth between the two levels we watch, and then it came down and held right off of the Holy Orange power level. That was a great opportunity as well. Again, barely broke it by more than a tick, and then we bounced, and again, from this bumper car or bumper bowling alley bumper analogy, come up, hold the 200, pull back, hold the FMA, and come right back to the VWAP there. So we hold for a nice 5, 6, 7 point bounce off the Holy Orange power level. Great opportunity there. Come down, hold the FMA. And then we hold right around the retracement. Remember I told you guys we have this leg up. I think it was this leg right here. Yep. And I told you if we push to new highs this morning, we would have to redraw this fib for this current leg. But if we didn't push to new highs, we had our 38.50 and 61. Well, came right to the 38 here, as you can see, held it to the tick, peaked through it by a couple ticks, and then held it nearly to the tick. So 3 beautiful holds from the 38. Of course, the problem was, like I said, the bears were really in control at that point. And if you look what happened. If you measured your fib from the high of the morning down to where we rotated here, just a couple ticks below the 38 retrace, where did the market bounce to and fail? To the tick, nearly, yep, to the tick, the 61.8 retrace of the sell-off from the high of the day down to where it bounced, right to the 61.8. So if you're measuring these fibs and you're using them, they're giving you great opportunities. So we turn right at the 61.8 retrace of that smaller leg down. And then from there, it's just a beautiful sell-off. We hold the back end of the 200. Again, it tried to hold the 38 again. 50 didn't really get you much. Notice this, right down to the 61.8 to the tick. But when it got to the 61.8 and bounced, again, the bears were in control here, tried to get through this little area, and then we failed again, came back down. And it was just a sell-off. See, the next scaffolding level did not do much for you. It just kind of went right through it as if it wasn't there. And then just continued to parry down to the next scaffolding where we got a little bit of a reaction. However, the bears jumped in right off the 200 moving average and then continued to swat it back lower. And again, a little messy in here in terms of, anything sexy, but then holds the back end of the scaffolding. And then what is the low of the day from yesterday? This very discrete area I told you would make the most sense for support. It came right to this pocket between 45.55 half and 45.53 half, which was this 2-point pocket that if we go up to the higher time frames, we can look back and see why I marked that. And I told you that there's something going on right around this area. It was this failure back from mid-July there, and if we were to come back, and we were watching it for about a week or two now, if it was to pull back, that little zone right there made a lot of sense for the market to hold and bounce from. Well, what was the low of yesterday again? Right at the bottom end of that range, never broke through it. In fact, it held it nearly to the tick at the bottom end of that little pocket, and now here we are bouncing, and we're up about almost 50 points from there. We're up over 40 points from that expected support zone. So some pretty cool stuff, even though I was a little disappointed we didn't get that peak up out of the open there for the pattern to complete on the 60-minute. Again, you can't be right every single day. And the nice part about it is we don't necessarily have to be right. We just have to have conditions. And if those conditions aren't met, then we trade, whatever the market's giving us. So that kind of completes our review here for yesterday. And then let's see what happened here coming into the overnight session. And coming into this morning, again, beautiful parry and hold off the 200 here in the overnight session, holds the VWAP, comes up. Now this holy orange power level was not on the screen at the time. It was 3 a.m. is when that populated. So if you move this back, that wasn't quite there yet. But we come up and then hold the back end of the VWAP and then get back through and hold it here. And then we start to come up. And again, there's that beautiful pullback into the VWAP again. A lot of trouble here right around our scaffolding. And now we're up here testing up around the 50% of yesterday. All right, so let's go ahead and jump up to our higher time frames.